present myself.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bodies in Residence Artist Talks. We have all of our wonderful participants here with us today. My name is Julian Balbonton. I'm the Community and Social Media Manager at Bodies in Play, and I'm happy to be a part of this event and the events before, like Bodies in VR. So take it away, Ellie.
Amazing. Thank you, Julian. So my name is Ellie. I am the coordinator for Bodies in Residency and also Bodies in Play in general. Today, really happy to have all the residents, most of the residents here, and some of them with their recordings here to join us in this launch event. So we're officially kicking off for the exciting 1 month residency. And I'll just be sharing my screen slides. Am I sharing? No. Okay. So, Bodies in Residency. This is an inclusive co-creation for wearable technology and XR partnership between OCAT University and DMG that brings together the academic, cultural, and community practitioners to co-create knowledge towards more inclusive and innovative design practices. Before I start, I will start with a land acknowledgement. OCAT University acknowledges the ancestral territories of the Mississauga of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which we live, work, and create. OCAT University stands for Ontario College of Art and Design. It's a public art university located in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where we'll have all the residents come here for an in-person immersive residence during the upcoming week. And DMG was built together as an alternative space for game designers on the margins to find solidarity, tools for survival, peer support, and a place of our own to have fun and create games freely. It is centrally around and also physically located in Toronto. I'll briefly introduce the Bodies in Residency team, including Julian, Cindy, me, Emma, Tamika, Kate, Trish, Kahani, Tyler, and Ria, who we will be meeting with or seeing in the following months, who will be present in the physical or psychological region in some space. And the Bodies in Play structure, here I put it is to introduce a bit about how Bodies in Residency program situates into this whole BIP structure. So BIP is a 3-year feminist research creation collaboration, as mentioned, between OCAT, specifically Gameplay Lab, Social Body Lab, and then with DMG. And BIP explores the intersection of wearable technology and XR through a series of game jams and the residency programs. The program's goal is to facilitate meaningful equity within the creative technology space through participatory feminist research creation in embodied interfaces. Bodies in Residency, as we can see in the purple marked little face, fits into the general structure as a form for people to come in together, do some immersive working, share knowledge sharing, collaboration, and also as a way to inform or be informed from previous workshop and jams. And we hope to contribute the knowledge to the general greater public. This is the Design Justice Network Principles by Sasha, which well demonstrated our goals or initiatives about achieving mutual benefits that's not only centered on academic research, but also to participating artists, fostering a less exploitative relationship. Also, we aim to support the local community by altering the traditional dynamics between artists and academic institutes and communities. Academic institutions will gain knowledge of the challenges of local communities and also engage with real world scenarios with the people, with the artists. So we try to foster these equal relationships between one another. And please feel free to share any thoughts that you have, any feedback, or anything that you want to contribute during the process. My introduction will be short and quick so that we can leave more room for the artist talk that will be happening soon. The schedule for today is the introduction, which is wrapping up. And then we'll go in the order from Jessica, then to Kay, Olivia, Shalaka's recording, a break for 10 minutes, and then with the following residents, Max, Lee, Ling, and Michelle. Then we'll wrap up in 10 minutes. And if we have more time, we'll take some Q&A during the process. Each one of you have 15 minutes, and then there is a 5 minutes room in between for either questions or if someone goes over, that could be the room. So without further ado, we can start, and I'll stop my presentation. All right, so Julian, would you mind playing the first recording?
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Duarte. I use the pronoun she, her. I am so happy to participate in this residency, so thank you for having me. I am so sorry of not being able to be in live, but I am right now traveling in a plane from Argentina. My background is in film production. Since 2015, I have been working in immersive video, like recording and post-producing 360 videos. And I have a master in electronic arts, where I learned to program microcontrollers to create more interactive artworks. So from there, I become interested in the development of experimental interfaces with open software technologies, do-it-yourself, or low-tech, as we call it in Latin America. So I joined these two fields, like immersive technologies and experimental interfaces. And I have been developing a VR experience with wearables interfaces. I would like to show this, my first work related to this is called Cyber Circus. It's a first-person perspective short films in 360 video, which I exhibit as an installation. So I have developed a system in which when the user look themselves in VR, two vibrating motors in their wrist were activated, giving the sensation of a rope, like a tie, you know. In that way, was looking for intensify the sense of being tied in a chair. So to intensify the embodied perception of the character, let's say. And for this residency, I want to keep working on my research creation project called Pin to Awaken, in which I wonder what happened when we pay attention to the gesture of the breathing.
Take a deep breath through your nose and feel the air fill your chest. When you exhale, your body empties. When air enters, the lungs expand, ribs and chest rise. Let it go and let your body relax in each exhale. Try again. Inhale slowly. The air slides down. Your belly is like a bellow that expands, and exhaling flattens it.
It's an extended reality performance specifically is a VR game experienced through natural gestures. It's a first-person perspective, full body tracking, and self-avatar. The XR performance takes place in a stage space in which I characterize myself in a role of a guide, wearing a garment made of fiber optics and wool, leading the user from the tangible space into the digital through a hybrid script. I develop alternative controllers. There are two belts that the users wears around the chest and around the abdomen to track variation in the volume of the body during breathing. So these wearable interfaces are two belts I knit handcraft with conductive yarn, and the data is acquired through the variation in the resistance of the yarn, which is connected to a voltage divided circuit. The signals is then sent to Unity to trigger audiovisual feedback, enabling the user to navigate this virtual space through breathing. I like to define this project as a big prototype, which is currently in function, but it still have a lot of work to do in order to be able to exhibit to the general public. And I have been showcasing this artwork in a format of Open Studio, in which I have been collecting feedback of the user to develop new interactions. So my goals for the residency are to experiment with a soft conductive material, to develop a stretchy fabric, and to design a prototype garment that better capture the body movements. And on the other hand, I would like to conduct some play testing sessions to gather feedback from the group and in order to improve the gameplay. And for sure, I'm willing to share with you the development I have been doing of the sensors. I have been working with ESP32, and I already have a good communication software hardware system to send data to Unity through Wi-Fi. And what I would like to work specifically on that are in the how manage the data to get a better measurement of the breathing, which, I mean, working with biosignals is a tough task. But I think this is a perfect way to share all these questions I have, and also to share what I have been doing till now. And to finish, I would like to show you something about the last project I have been working in a collective with artists from Montreal. Is two devices called Cajita Abierta and the technology de la FET, which are hardware software development to establish communication between sensors through ESP32 to musical synthesizers. So I have been working in a collective called Percepto Collective, in which we have been developing tangible interfaces for and with artists with motor disabilities to explore the creative potential of these interfaces to create music, allowing to everyone join the party. So, do you like?
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, well, also I'm willing to share with you all these interfaces, and yeah, to keep enjoying the do-it-yourself methods to share information and create new fun stuff. So okay, see you soon, guys. I am really happy to stay with you, to have the opportunity to work with you. And so yeah, see you around. Bye bye.
Thanks to Jessica. And a quick mention is that Jessica is an Argentinian media artist, VR developer, and art researcher. She was based between Buenos Aires and Montreal. Her work is focused on the relationship between the body and VR and how the immersive media affects perception, self-awareness, and learning. She explored the place that ubiquitous technologies give to the human being as a user through the research of the immersive language of VR, as well as the integration of the interface on the human bodies. And next, we'll have Kate. Would you like to introduce yourself, or would you like to me grab a few? Okay.
I can introduce myself. I have like an intro
Okay.
slide at the beginning of mine.
Amazing.
There we go. Yeah, hi, my name is Kay. I use they, them pronouns. I identify as non-binary, transmasculine. So a little bit about me. I worked in graphic design and children's book publishing for 9 years. I like had a whole career and then decided that I was tired of doing it and have gone back to school. So I'm currently a graduate student at the Interactive Telecommunications program at NYU. I also sort of a practice that continued across those two portions of my life is that I'm a drag performer and producer in New York. And I've been doing that for about 5.5 years. And when I started doing that, I started doing costume design as well. And I started finding out about wearables, ended up at ITP, and I've been doing a lot of work with wearables and electronics and costuming while I'm in grad school, which is really exciting. Julian, are you controlling the slides? Could you go to the next one if you are? If not, I guess I'll click. Oh, there we go. Okay. So here are some samples of costume work that I've done in the past. This is just some stuff I've done. That first one is a GIF that doesn't look like it's playing, but there are 3D printed eyeballs in that wig that blink. There's a trigger hidden in one of the braids that comes down the front. And I used that in a performance so I could like trigger them during my performance that they opened and blinked and like moved around, which was like one of the first wearables projects I did and has led to me like really exploring that a lot more. Could we go to the next slide? Oh. Could you? Yeah, there we go. This is all just like kind of samples of costume work that I've done in the last like couple of years. I'm really proud of this set. This was for another performer in Brooklyn. This is all recycled leather. I volunteered at this organization called Fab Scrap that recycles textile waste from the fashion industry in New York. So this was a lot of like little swatches of like leather color samples that I sewed together, like honestly, in a sort of unhinged way to make this whole outfit. But I'm really proud of it. Could we go to the next one? And this is just another costume that I made for a burlesque performer, my friend Rara, who's amazingly talented. Another piece that I'm really proud of. We can go to the next one. So this is more of my wearables work. Oh, I'm sad that the GIFs aren't playing for any of these, but this was a wearable piece that I made my first semester at ITP. It was like an acrylic cut sort of harness, and the fans that are along the back of it there, and there were better examples in the GIFs, but they open and closed according to like a potentiometer that you wore on your wrist. So this was like also intended for performance. I only ever used it for a recorded one because it had, as wearables tend to do, it's like a little bit fussy and delicate, and I never actually took this one out to a bar, but I have video of a full drag performance using this as well. We can go to the next one. And then these are like some miscellaneous soft interfaces I made in a class that Kate taught for us actually at ITP. This was like a really fun rapid prototyping class. So I made this bucket hat that can be used as a game controller. It has the arrows that you see on either side of the brim there are buttons that you can clip in with alligator clips to an Arduino or a different interface. They're just buttons, so you press them and they will do whatever you program the button to do, and as do all of these little shaped ones on this other soft interface. We can go to the next slide. Oh, and another project that I have been working on is this workshop series called Dragtronics. I co-created it with my collaborator, Priyanka Menken, who's like one of my classmates at ITP. And it's focused on teaching the basics of wearables to the drag community in New York. Bodies in Play very generously gave us like a small sponsorship to purchase materials. So we were able to offer this. I think we had 10 free spots, and then we had like 5 paid spots. So it was a lot of drag performers in New York who were interested in learning about wearables, didn't have access to go to grad school, or like a lot of people told me that they felt very intimidated by like not knowing where to start with electronics and wearables. So this was a really fun workshop. People had a really good time, and continuing to develop this is part of what I'll be working on during my residency. We can go to the next one. So my goals for this residency are to develop and publish more resources for Dragtronics. I'd really like to have a website up with like all of our current resources on it, and something that we could continue adding to over time as we keep fleshing out the project. And I want to plan another iteration of it, start reaching out to spaces. We have a couple of leads, but I haven't had the focused time to sit down and get the ball rolling on another round. And then I'd love to get more feedback from our first round of participants and what would make sense for us to do with it moving forward. And then additionally, I've been developing a wearable LED grid as part of my thesis at ITP. So I'm going to keep working on that and documenting it with the goal of making it really easy to replicate. I have been a little bit frustrated with how opaque like DIY LED grid documentation has been online. It's been like kind of weirdly difficult to get like the specifics of what I want. And I also pretty recently have started exploring the possibility of making it modular in a way that could be replicated at scale. So designing potentially like a PCB board with the LEDs on it that I could have mass produced and used for workshops, and would make doing things like linking individual LEDs together with the explicit purpose of them being for wearables super easy and super accessible. And we can go to the next one, which I think is my last slide. And this is just stuff I didn't know. I guess this is more for like other residents and other people who may be interested in contacting me. But stuff that I'm looking for help with include like 3D modeling and printing, information around LEDs and LED grids, PCB board design, jewelry making, feedback on teaching workshops, resource hubs, that sort of thing. Things that like I have specific skill sets in and I'm like really excited to talk about include costume design, sewing, patterning, sort of all of that stuff, performance, wearables, fabrication, fashion, and also the way that the Maison Margiela makeup has taken over TikTok. If you know, you know. They're figuring out how to replicate it. I see Olivia nodding. That is my presentation. I guess I'm happy to answer some questions if people have them.
Thank you so much, Kate. I'm actually not sure how to pose questions. Well, let me see if there are anything in the comments.
Yeah, I have the comments open, but at least on our end, not coming any through. But I'm really excited. Excited to meet everyone, both here and in person next week. So
amazing. Thank you for the presentation. That's super cool. It's amazing to see your past projects on those costumes. Looks like really an interesting thing. So anyway, so we will have the next participants, and we're actually going very ahead of time. The next one is Olivia. Do you want to also introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I also have a bit of an intro slide, but about the Maison Margiela makeup, I'm also on that algorithm right now. But one of the joys of sharing a co-working space next week is that all of our algorithms will sync up. We'll all be on each other's TikTok feeds, which is beautiful, sharing on the same Wi-Fi. Anyways, okay, I am going to start to present. Share screen. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia. I am a resident with the Bodies in Residency. My background is I'm an artist and designer and educator here in Toronto. My pronouns are she, they. And honestly, if like you could only remember one thing about me, it's that I love my cats and I think about my cats 24/7, and I will show you photos of my cats whether or not you asked about them. Their names are Yo-Yo and Bandit was just on my lap, but he just left. But they might pop up, which I hope they do. Anyways, I love textiles right now. I think I would say I'm actually more into knitting than I am sewing for the first time in a long time. I'm knitting a sweater right now. But I also have a new hobby of collecting old knitting machines, which has been really fascinating to dive into this world. But I also really like tinkering with electronics and have worked as a software developer before. So when it comes to kind of like where I started and how did I get to something so soft, aka textiles, I actually started making very large objects made out of wood, plastic, metal, whatever, that would encourage movement or play. And I was very interested in furniture like aesthetics and wanting to kind of recreate things that felt like they could have been bought, but felt like made your like the relationship question with how you're interacting with them. And so I used to love being in a wood shop. But then two things happened. One, I did my master's and I was an RA in the social body lab. And I helped on the textile game controller project that was with DMG. And I just started to fall more in love with textiles. And then COVID hit. And you couldn't really be in a wood shop, but you could be at home sewing and knitting for 16 hours a day. So I ended up just being completely immersed in textiles, just from my own interest and from learning more about e-textiles in my master's at OCAD. And I have a background on, because right now my studio is really messy, but I have just started to grow my studio and my tools collection at home. And my cats also like textiles. They like chasing yarn, of course, but Yo-Yo makes an excellent pattern weight, which is sometimes annoying, but it's also very cute. So where is my practice now? So one philosophy that I have for myself is I want to get playing as fast as I can. So I kind of put myself into two roles in the e-textile space. One is as an artist for myself, and then also as an instructor. Within the GTA, I teach different like wearables classes and physical computing classes. But both of my philosophy for both of them is like get playing as fast as I can, or get my students playing as fast as I can. So as an artist, I'm always thinking about like, what do I have in terms of like sewing or textiles that I can already use and leverage right away? And I've been using this with like the idea of like vests and things that are really easy and quick to rapidly prototype. And then also as an instructor, thinking about from a pedagogical standpoint, like how can I make modular and flexible samples for my students to play with and understand easily. So when I started to like one of the first projects that I started to do like after COVID, after masters, it was a couple years after, was the haptic vest. So this was from a residency that I did in Tallinn, Estonia. And this is where I started to think a bit more about like fashion and how can I start to incorporate things that I see in stores, but change the aesthetic and the function of them a bit more. So this is a half vest that's based off of this company called Engineered Garments. They're a Japanese design company. They make beautiful stuff, but I like to call it like it's useful and useless at the same time in its aesthetics and its purpose. It's very utilitarian, but I'll show you a photo of the half vest that I modeled it after that. But something that I really liked about it in terms of like the form and function was the fact that it kind of like countered against this idea of like, what do e-textiles look like, which tend to be like a bit more kitschy, a bit more silver, a bit more in this like weird, like futures aesthetic, not weird, but there's a look to it. And so I wanted to try and see what I could do with that. So my process for the haptic vest was really thinking about like, what have I made recently and what can I replicate in different ways? So I know I had made a vest recently, like it was a really loose waistcoat. It was a British pattern that I was using. But the engineered garments half vest is here. So I compiled different images of the garment itself, and then just started to trace like what are the different affordances that I can have here. Like where could I use the design as a sensor? Where could I put an output into it? I took that and then started to rapidly prototype it. Would just like print out the pattern, cut out my fabric, put in really rough seams. And once I got something that I thought was interesting, then starting to build up from here. So it kind of came from like looking at like fashion first and then seeing how can I alter it into something of my own. I think one of the coolest things within this project that I did was testing out different materials. And this is a vacuum formed fabric, which it just blew my mind. There's a really cool GIF on it on my website of like the fabric being pressed into the rocks here. Anyways, so what this vest actually does is that there initially was a sensor on the belt that was connected to a Circuit Playground Express. And then, or actually this is a Flora, doesn't matter. But as you would play around with the strap, then there'd be haptic motors along the chest that would be activated. In all rushed residency work, the sensor of the input didn't actually end up being as functional, but the motors did work. Something that I always try and do is try and plan out my circuits as diligently as possible beforehand. So I always take a photo and draw on top of them and then put all my tracings into chalk afterwards. I sewed with conductive thread, which was very fun. And I also was soldering. I was trying to practice a little bit more durability in my circuits, and then soldered the haptic motors on with onto snaps so that I could service them a little bit easier. So inside the prototype, this was, I used only like with the conductive thread, ideally it shouldn't really be like seen like this, but anyways, I was really proud of this with how it turned out, even though the sensor didn't work, but it was kind of like my first foray into quick prototyping with vests. Then a couple months later, there was the Bodies and Wearables workshop, which was also put on by this project, where I created these pull and push vests. So I wanted to kind of expand this idea of using ready-made patterns that I already had, and how can I alter them and use kind of like this, like different styles that I've seen or different details in clothing that I thought could be interesting to fidget with or play with. The main goal for this was also just to play around with new materials. So I had this rubber that I'd been sitting on for so long. It was conductive rubber. And so here's a GIF. Maybe it's playing for you. It is for me, but it is, as I move it, it is controlling the servo, moving back and forth. And so I embedded it into a vest here, where I sliced the vest open with 2 seams and added it in to create a circuit, so that as I was playing around with the rubber here, here with pull. And then there was week 2 of the workshops. And I was, what should I do? I don't know. And in my mind of thinking, I need to get playing as soon as possible, I was looking at the materials that I had and the patterns that I had. And I decided just to make the opposite interaction. So rather than pulling, I wanted to make something that pushed. So I used the same pattern, but then expanded it open and put conductive wool or roving inside of it, so that as you press down, the servo would move. So different interaction, but same code overall. So it was a fun experiment. And in this project, I prioritized embedding the sensor rather than making all the connections nice and neat, because in the inside, it's just full of alligator clips. One of the more recent experiments that I've been working on is ruffles. So I started this when I was at the Electronic Textiles Camp residency late last fall. And this was an experiment in using fashion trends again as texture and sensors. But this time I wanted to think about it isolated away from clothing. I had made a rather large kind of tapestry thing in the summer, and I was really kind of focused on wall hangings and thinking about touching walls, but having it be with like the same kind of connotations of fashion and play. So I wanted to see what it was like to isolate that. This was fun. Was it extremely successful? maybe not. Something I will say in sharing some of this work is that they are all prototypes. And I think coming from where my initial world of like really polished object and like putting it into like a very like clinical space to showing like work that I haven't like cut all the threads off of is took a lot of courage for me to do that. Like it took me a while for me to like want to share this and actually consider it like worthy of like sharing the process. So thank you everyone for listening. I talk a lot. But anyways, each ruffle here is pressure sensitive and is embedded with the conductive roving, which is the same stuff that we see in this GIF here. So I wanted to take that same concept, but put it into a different place or a different holder, and then also to control the light rather than motion. So the GIF is really low quality, but you can see as I press down, it's lighting it up in correlation to the pressure. Inspiration for this was thinking about, I really love femme designers that take like things that are like traditionally femme, but then put it in such a lens where it's almost anti-femme, but then is femme at the same time, where it's like a bit more about like volume and box and shape of the garment rather than being for like the traditional like flattering gaze. And so I really like Cecily Bonson, Kika Vargas, Molly Goddard, and Simone Rocha. And so I was looking at a lot of their work and thinking about gathering material and thinking about how it's ornamental, playful, and comfortable at the same time. So process was I made ruffles. I'm not going to go into this too much, but essentially I made sure that each side had some different conductive material so that I could connect all of them together. More to the point is that I try to make one thing at a time and then build up from there. With the ruffles, I would test each one diligently to make sure it was working. And then I would get other people to test them out. Then I would try testing them all out together. So really building up piecemeal by piecemeal to, and this is how this idea came to me a bit more organically rather than having like a set design at the beginning. So with this one, I was playing around with assembling the ruffles. Always take a photo and draw out different types of circuits that I can have on an image before doing anything on my material. I find that to be one of the most helpful ways for me just to have a reference image of that. And then putting the circuit onto the material and then testing every single connection I make. So, and I try and document each little step as much as possible because you never know when you might want to show someone something. But yeah, final detail shots. At the back of it was very rough, but I digress. Anyways, eTextile Swatchbook. This is my teaching tool that I bring to classes. I've been using it for about a year now. I find it to be incredibly helpful for students just to be able to have hands-on examples and to also just be able to quickly connect it to any microcontroller that I have. So I have a variety of different swatches. I have them to show just simple like circuits. I have them to show different resistance so that students can see the difference between like what does a 1K resistor do versus a 100 ohm resistor, different types of interactions. But when I was designing them, I wanted to make them modular, short circuit proof, and an easy way or to have easy access to power. So whoops. In them, sorry, I keep on hitting back. Each side is like double layered with canvas so that there's no way that the previous circuit or the circuit on either side could interfere with any of the other pages. There's grommets so that I can put binder rings through them so that I can add or take away as I develop it. And then also 2 alligator clips with a 3-volt battery that I can clip onto any of the circuits to power them. So within this, it was really fun to make, to think about it from a design perspective and a teaching tool. But I find that when I am working these days, that it's really hard for me to not think about teaching tools and to think about how can I most clinically show this to my students in a very like easy to use way. Because I think when I am thinking about eTextiles and a lot of my art practice, I've been teaching a couple classes this semester for the last few years, that it's been quite time consuming mentally for that. And so something that I'm really excited about is where and what do I do next? So something that I'm really excited about for this residency is I really want to have dedicated time to continue exploring textures and e-textile materials as sensors, but I want to think about it from not necessarily a clinical and pedagogical lens. I want to think about it from more of a lens of memory. So I have not said this yet, but the next artist that's presenting next is an artist named Shalaka. They are a curator and urban planner, and we met on Instagram during the pandemic and have become collaborators since then. And we were talking, and we both have found this desire to relearn family languages. Shalaka more so like kind of brought the idea to me and then extended it to me as a collaborator. But my family immigrated from Poland in the 70s, and everyone around me spoke Polish, but I did not speak Polish, and neither did my sisters. And it was a very intentional decision on my mom to do that, to have us more focused on English in our household. And so there's always been this idea of like loss of family language, but surrounded by those sounds from a young age. So something that I am going to be focusing on with Shalaka is looking at sounds that we remember within our languages that we were surrounded by or spoke as young children, and how can we recreate those feelings and textures with the body. So textures and sounds, and maybe I will explore making some e-textile sensors as feedback. That is something else that I've been wanting to do. But overall, very tactile. I'm really excited about textures and materials, and I'm excited to collaborate with Shalaka. And they have a presentation that is pre-recorded. Unfortunately, they were not able to make it today. And so they will be presenting after. But thank you, everyone. I don't know if there's any questions or anything like that.
I think we'll wait until Julian to monitor the chat a little bit. Thank you so much for presenting. That was fascinating. I would love to touch some of the samples in person. Amazing. Okay, so calling for Julian. Now we have Shalaka's recording videos. If you're there, please play.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shalaka. I'm one of the artists as part of the Bodies in Play residency, and I'm really grateful to be collaborating in this residency with artist, designer, and educator Olivia Pryor. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be present for the artist talk today as I'm in transit, and I'm hoping to present a slightly different artist talk as I'm not a practicing artist. Rather, I'm trained as an urban planner and currently work as an independent curator. Also, pardon my voice. I'm just kind of getting over a cold, so it might just be a little scratchier than usual. And so for this talk, I was thinking of showcasing some examples of work just through my curatorial practice. But instead, I kind of landed on sharing a little bit about mobile methodologies. It's an area of interest that really informs my practice as a curator. And I also think it's a curious entry point into the conversations we're about to get into during Bodies in Play. When Olivia and I were talking about our project, we were sort of conceptualizing it as a bit of a language reconnection project using e-textiles. So what does it actually look like to enact a language reconnection project? Is the act of language reconnection a mobile methodology? It certainly requires us to build an ethic of visiting, especially with one another, as we'll be sharing stories about our experiences with lost languages in our families to build out this project. In some ways, the way that we do this work is really useful and extremely sort of fundamental in terms of me as a curator actively building towards a curatorial ethic that's rooted in positionality and around locating myself in relationship to the community and broader social ecosystems that I'm a part of. And so, yeah, I'll sort of be talking a little bit about mobile methodologies in the context of a visiting methodology. So a bit of a disclaimer, especially because I'm just coming out of a bit of a cold and a bit of a travel spell. My mind does work a bit explosively, and sometimes it can feel a little bit like the scene on the screen. But I hope that it sort of lands for everyone today. So I've been thinking about these connections of body, of play, and how they intersect with land and language, and sort of landed on this query. How are mobile methodologies connected to e-textiles that explore language reconnection? So a disconnection from land and consequently from language require reconnection. I think it's going to be interesting to sort of navigate this in the form of e-textiles in terms of what we choose to, literally connect, what sort of materials we bring into this work. Olivia and I are both also pulling from the visual language of children's books that are used to learn languages. And so I think there's a lot here in terms of texture, and sort of what tools are used around reconnection journeys. I think there's also the question of, considering mobile methodologies and what it looks like to engage in an ethic of visiting that allows us to do this work in a good way. So just really quickly, I'll explain how I sort of got into thinking about walking methodologies. I'm in my late 20s and I don't know how to drive. I've never learned, I've never sat in the driver's seat before. And this is probably due to quite a few different incidents through my life. But I particularly think about when I was in an accident when I was younger, on a biped. I think there's a bit of body memory that inhibits me from learning how to control a large vehicle again. But also as an able-bodied person, I walk and bus and bike everywhere. And I'm very lucky for longer distances to have friends volunteer to drive me. And so all of this to say, when I learned that there was a area of study around walking, I was pretty excited and I was in and ready for the ride. Walking and mobile methodologies are studied across disciplines, but one sort of definition of walking methodologies that really resonated with me comes from Stephanie Springay and Sarah E. Truman from their book, Walking Methodologies in a More Than Human World, where they say on the back cover that walking methodologies are a research methodology that build on the importance of place, sensory inquiry, embodiment, and rhythm. And so when we're talking about walking methodologies, we need to talk about land as it relates to all aspects of existence: culture, spirituality, language, law, family, and identity. And so on the screen here, you'll see the background. On the left is a garden space in my backyard that I've sort of been tending to for the last few years, and that I'll be starting up this year as well. And then on the right, you'll see something that you're maybe really familiar with in the summertime, paved paths with, life making its presence known through the cracks. And so I wanted to think about these 4 pillars that I mentioned in the last slide around place, sensory inquiry, embodiment, and rhythm, because I think they actually have a lot in common with sort of how I understand e-textiles and sort of the ways that they can sort of provide stimulus and be a tool for people. So place, is, and I'll talk about these themes as I understand them within mobile methodologies, and I think it'll be really exciting to sort of understand how they connect or maybe don't connect with the work that we'll sort of embark on in the next little bit. So place naturally is a significant concept in walking research. It's understood as a specific location and as a process and an event. So walking can be a way to be responsive to place. It activates modes of participation that are situated and relational. And so sensory inquiry is, if walking is a way of being in place, then walking also allows people and researchers to tune into sensory experiences. And so what are those elements that sort of animate the walk? Is it the sense? Is it the sounds? Is it the conversations that you sort of fall into with neighbors? Is it someone asking you for directions? It can be all these sort of modes of activating your senses. And then, yeah, embodiment is really interesting to me as well, in that it's a way that movement, mind, body, and environment are all sort of connected. And then rhythm is the pace and tempo of walking. This, some researchers are interested in the flows of everyday life. Others, the pulse of communities. That could include traffic and crowds and music and other sort of environmental phenomena. But I think, yeah, of these, rhythm is a really interesting one to think about when we're thinking about our project around language reconnection, where the rhythm and cadence of certain phrases is something that Olivia and I have talked about as sort of sticking with us. And so it'll be curious to see how it sort of comes through in the way that we develop our work together. So on the slide, there's a couple of different, participatory arts research methodologies that pertain to walking methods. So walking tours, interviews, pedestrianism. But I just want to call attention to disability in relationship to this methodology, because ever since I encountered it, it was a sort of, it was a question that was just on my mind in terms of how the area of study make space for disability justice work. And so the work Cripistemologies in the City, Walking Together as Sense Making by Eliza Chandler, Megan Johnson, Becky Gold, Carla Rice, and Alex Balmer walks through some of these questions and works through them, reminding us that walking is not just the physical act, but it's also different and crypt ways of traversing the city. It includes walking, rolling, tripping, hand-holding, being guided, and guiding, all as crypt methodologies that produce crypt knowledges of the urban landscape. I think part of the reason I'm really excited about their work and this I guess this article essay is because we are all building and adding to our spatial, relational, and multisensorial awareness of a place as we move through it. And I think it's important to consider the role of voice and language in these multisensorial awarenesses, and what they do for creating and sustaining place for us. And yeah, I guess here I'll just sort of say part of the motivation for this project is around, yeah, like living my life as someone who, at some point was fluent in 5 languages, and then sort of growing into a life where I can really only communicate in 1 language. And so the question that sort of arises here is what conditions do we need to unlock so that our bodies may play multilingually? This is sort of the question that I think, best connects these principles around mobile methodologies and sort of the work that Olivia and I are embarking on in terms of connecting or sort of testing how e-textiles can support us in learning our lost languages. For me, Marathi, and for Olivia, Polish. And while we haven't quite landed on, whether it's phrases from my childhood that we want to activate, or if it's, actually the mechanics of the language that we want to learn and activate, this question of playing multilingually, I think, is really intriguing to me. And I'm really excited to be able to explore it and have it intersect across, just a couple of my life experiences. And I'm really thrilled to be part of this exploration in a cohort together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to Shavaka, who's not here, but thanks for the recording. It was very interesting to have both like the technical, practical designer perspective, but also more on theoretical, philosophical side, and to see how those things inspire each other and merge together. Since Chaka and also Yasuka is not here, I have two questions for Olivia and also for Kay. It's still there. So yes, hello. So for Olivia, I'm curious about the material of the fabric that you used for the vest and for the vacuumed pump out like a protruded shape. How did you achieve that? And the question for Kay is, I'm very interested in the drag pieces that you make, and I feel like in drag shows, like each one have their very embodied personality. Do you create your costumes thinking about a certain personality, or what's your creation process there? And whoever wants to answer first.
Yeah, I can go. Something I will answer that. Just something else, just to add to kind of like Shalaka's talk and my talk as well, is that we both have different sets of children's novels that our friends have brought back from us from different countries. So Shalaka had some friends back in India that brought them back some books in Marathi, and so they referenced it in the chat there. But I think that's something that is going to be really interesting, just in terms of like language and whatnot, and thinking about like it from a childlike lens. But for the question about the fabric, so when you're vacuum forming fabric, it has to be a fabric that is very tightly woven, and it has to be really high synthetic percentage within like the blend of it. So the material that I used was, think like a really industrial like work jacket that's polyester, like almost rain resistant. And so essentially when you're vacuum forming, you have this sheet of really thin plastic, sometimes it's a bit thicker, and you heat it up underneath like a heat lamp, and it gets to the point where it gets flexible and pliable. Like, you know, it's ready if you touch it and it starts to kind of like bounce a little bit, or it like kind of has like some give. And so you can do that same thing, but with fabric instead. It works better if it is a little thicker, but you can do it with a lighter weight woven fabric as well. Knits won't work just because there's a bit too much flexibility, and you would have to like really stretch it out for that. But yeah, you like essentially heat up the fabric underneath the heat lamp, and then you treat it just as you would a normal piece of acrylic or whatever else you would be vacuum forming. And as you pull it down, it like just sucks into like whatever form it is there. This was a pretty common practice. So the residency was at the art school in Tallinn, Estonia, and this was something that they played around with quite a bit in their textiles shop. And so they had a large supply of like the different fabric that you could use. But if you have a vacuum forming machine or access to one, because I don't know many people who have one just at home, but if you have access to one in plastic shops, you should be able to bring in like synthetic fabric for that.
Cool. Thank you for answering. And to Kate.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm really excited about the vacuum formed fabric, because we actually at ITP in our shop, we have a vacuum form which I've been like learning how to use, haven't done very much with yet, but making different textured fabric is really exciting. Yeah, so you asked about the way in which like drag persona and character sort of ties into costume design. And I mean, the short answer is like, yes, it has a huge impact, because like most performers have like a persona, somewhere between like a persona and a brand that they're sort of tying a lot of their work into when they're on stage. And if not one of those things, then they definitely have a concept for the number that they're using the act for, you know, and there's specific things often that they're trying to communicate in the act or through their persona. And like I personally am like a clothes person, and I think costume can have like a really huge impact on that. So I guess like my process for my stuff, like the vast majority of the costumes I've made have been for myself, just because that was like how I started learning costume design. I'm self-taught, and I was just like making them for myself because I couldn't afford to buy them. And then I like accidentally kind of got really good at it and started being paid by other people to make them. So for me, like my drag persona is very, at least like in this moment, I think I'm maybe going to evolve things in the near future, but like is very like, spooky genderqueer Disney villain, like pulling on all of the ways that like Disney villains were queer coded and making that sort of like canonical and sexy. And like I do a lot of like lime green and black as like a color scheme that I again sort of like accidentally landed on, and then it was just easy because everything mixed and matched. So I do like a lot of that. Yeah, so like when I'm designing outfits, like I have like kind of a specific like gender balance often that I'm trying to do that's like very personal to me and is like a little hard to articulate. Like there are certain things I think that feel very gender affirming to me and certain things that don't. And that's just like very personal. Yeah, and when I'm working with other people, I mean, the examples that I showed for the other performers, it really depends on who I'm working with and as to like how much direction they give me. I mean, all those two costumes that I showed as examples, those performers have really different personas. Rara Darling, who I did the sort of like longer burlesque style dress one for, they do a lot of like their burlesque performer, very like sexy, very sultry. And I'm actually working on another piece for them right now. But like a lot of the concern around that is like, how does it going to come off? Because it's for burlesque. So like it has to be easy to remove is like a huge part of the design process and like often fairly technical. Like the one I'm working on for them right now is like, it's got all these layers, but one layer is a dress that we're using this new release method on the sides where you use they're not hook and eye loops. It's like loop tape down both sides, and then you lace it with a single lace. And when you pull on it, it falls off. Like it just falls off. I've never seen a reveal. I've very rarely seen people use this type of reveal because it's like much fussier to install and then use on stage, but it's so cool. So you know the way that like people are going to be moving and removing things on stage is part of the process. And then the other one that I showed, the leather piece, that was for a performer whose stage name is God Complex, which tells you a lot kind of about what they're going for with their entire drag persona. But they basically sent me a mood board that in my memory was like, it was like, I'm trying to remember what was on there. I remember that there were not a lot of photos of people, and then the like painting of Satan where he's like sulking like this, that Lucifer painting was on there and he's naked. That's a nude male painting. And I was like, Plex, none of these people have clothes on in these photos you sent me. What do you want me to make you? Like I was trying to figure out what the vibe was based entirely on very like arty references. I mean, we obviously landed on something that I was really happy with, but you know, the process really depends on the person and the persona really depends on the person. And that's a thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about, like as I'm designing stuff. Sorry, that was such a long answer.
No, thank you so much. That's awesome. That's very interesting to hear. All right, so since we have finished the for people, and then let's take a quick break of 10 minutes, and then we'll come back for the next 4 presentations. All right, we'll see everyone at 7:16. All right, so we are back from the break. And then let's continue with our presentation. Hello, people. So, who's on the list?
I think it's me. I think I am
You got it.
post break.
Yes, so go ahead, Max.
Cool. I apologize to everybody. My cat is not currently screaming, but may scream loud enough for everyone to hear. She was just screaming a moment ago and may interrupt. So, I don't know, cat life or whatever. I'm going to throw up my presentation. Oh, geez. Let me know if we're all good. I can't see anything. I'm going to assume we're all good, hopefully. Hello, my name is Maxwell Lander. I've realized recently that I've been in around DMG space for a whole 10 years, which feels like a lot and a lot of time to have been kicking around with everyone. I am a game maker, an artist. I used to be a pornographer, which feels very important to me as I enter a period of my life that is a little bit more official and adult in a different kind of adult way. It feels important to me to bring up a lot of the ways in which sexuality has interfaced with my work. Also, as the internet becomes more and more hostile towards queer people. But I'm also an academic, but that's kind of new. And so I'm being like a little bit quiet about it and haven't fully really like embraced it yet. I started out as a photographer and centered most of my work in like queer identity and representation and bodies and all of the ways in which those things kind of interplay. And I did that for a really long time and then fatigued on the way capitalism can sometimes ruin your relationship to your art practice. And so looked for some new avenues to uh, be creative in and moved towards things that are interactive and game based and all of that kind of stuff. And so for the last few years, some of this might be somewhat familiar. I have been working in more interactive digital and physical space. These are some of the projects that I like that I've worked on. This one down here may be familiar to some folks, is a research project led by Cindy kicking around somewhere. But had some fun experiments with volumetric video in video games and was almost a little bit prescient in where I would end up in things because there was a relationship to LARP, live action role playing, which will come up as a theme later on that has become more important to me post that project. I also have, as I'm a person who have collaborated with burlesque performers in that, in this realm of things. This is, I don't know if people can hear the audio. I can also turn the audio off, but this is a, wow, it just started all the videos. I don't know if that's happening for you, but it's wild for me over here. But this is a performance with of a burlesque performer doing volumetric video, and it's this like interactive kind of experimental camera operator, like semi music video piece that I was exploring at the time. That someday I kind of want to return to. I made a toolkit within Unity in order to do a series of camera controls to kind of record weird videos and have weird outputs. We also, I don't want to say terrorized, but there was like a mild element of terrorizing the gameplay lab floor when Ivory started running around in various forms of various states of undress. But yeah, I also was the developer on the Living Dead VR experience that you can play on the Oculus Store, should you so wish, which was really fun because we took a
Max,
bunch of, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I think your video is also playing an audio, so we're hearing both.
I thought I muted them all. I apologize. This one, was this the, who knows? Who knows where the culprit was? I am not hearing audio, so. Yeah. Hopefully they're all now muted. Let me know if they're not. I will change things.
Yes, or it's my problem. Anyway, sorry, keep going on.
Great. This was really fun because we took a film that had all this like pre-made, obviously it is a pre-made piece of media, and we translated parts of it into a VR experience in order to house like a little bit more film media, because it was in collaboration with Hollywood Suite, and meant to show off an anniversary series of documentary film from behind the making of the film. It was kind of a convoluted sentence, but so we recreated the set of the movie in VR and then made all these like weird little games and interactive moments. And I have been a VR developer for a while now, and I don't really like a lot of VR. And it was fun to work on a project where I was like, oh, this is just this weird experimental project for the realm. It's quite experimental because it's not a game, but it's still sitting in like somewhat of a professional realm. But they kind of gave us free rein to take our inspiration from a horror film and not necessarily make a game out of it. And that was pretty fun. It was a cool time. And then this is the stuff that I actually make. Which is a VR game and a custom harness. The controller is on the Vive tracker, and this was a series of experiments that I was doing that were really, a lot of them were about how we look as performers when we're in VR. And so the game itself is totally benign. It's just meant to be like a hard kind of overwhelming game where the player is, I wanted to make it hard enough that the player kind of forgot that they looked really silly. That was a lot of the goals, was like, how can I design a game that people get immersed enough into that they forget that they look silly, or in this case, kind of suggestive. And so it's a very physically demanding game, which seemed to be one of the ways in which people forgot what they were doing. Yeah, it's a good time. I frequently joke that this is going to end up being my like magnum opus. Like I'm going to be 65 and be like, remember when I made that really silly 1VR game? Yeah. And then that's all a period of my past. And then I moved a little bit into analog game design, which I love a lot more than I thought I would, which is silly. I've been a role-playing gamer for most of my life. And when the pandemic hit and I could no longer go out and do VR, and certainly not like large performance-based VR stuff, I started designing tabletop games because it was the thing that everybody I knew was playing as a way to connect on the internet, and realized that the actual like hard design elements of it are really compelling to me. And part of the reason they're really compelling is because they allow the players to really dictate a lot of what the world building looks like, a lot of what the story ends up being. Like all tabletop role-playing games are in some way, shape, or form an act of story crafting and world building. And the idea that you could take really small little mechanical frameworks and hand them to people, and that they would make these huge expansive stories and performances out of them, became really compelling. And I realized that like it was a very technical interest for me. It was very mechanical, not just emotional, it kind of straddles this weird place. So I made a very silly game called Himbos of Myth and Metal that is a fantasy role-playing game about some lovable dummies. And I've made a number of games, and I've released them in a number of formats through a number of channels, but Frame 352 is one that I also keep returning to, partially because it has, to me, it has this element of augmented reality to it. And I think that was part of what I was kind of tapping into a little bit with RPGs, was like, oh, what is it that I like about this? I've been working in this mixed reality space, and then I go to this RPG space, and because I'm a person who, recognizes that everything is technology, that games are technology, that books are technology, that it's not about digital technology, it's just human creativity, that the ways in which games are a technology makes a lot of spaces that are non-digital still sit in a mixed reality zone for me. It's the thing I'm still figuring out, but there's a lot in there. Games are cool. People make cool games cooler. But all of that is to say that like my process is really chaotic, and I tend to jump and flit from medium to medium depending on where my interest takes me at any moment. And then I'll usually like explore a medium for a little bit and then step away and figure out what I can take from that medium and throw into this massive pile of stuff that is becoming my practice, that has many, many mediums in it, and not just many technologies, but also this like analog element and all of these different kind of relationships to one another. But I tend to, it's somewhat like friend groups, right? Where you're like, oh, I went and hung out with this clique for a while, and then I pulled one person into my close friend group, and this is me in all of my process. And so recently I decided to add synthesizers to the mix of tools and things that I explore. I have no musical background whatsoever. I do not know how to make or play music, or I have been teaching myself, but prior to this exploration, I have no experience with music whatsoever. But synthesizers are cool. Turns out music is also cool. And the exploration of it is very compelling. It is this weird little puzzle box that I find interesting. the inclusion of synthesizers actually resulted from me wanting to expand what analog game space could be and make it a little bit more immersive and spatial. There's this really old RPG product that comes with one of the original Dungeons and Dragons products that comes with a CD, and the booklet says like play this CD at different points. And I was like, this is AR. This is AR that is more player responsive than anything that we consider AR now. That is more player defined and engaged than anything we consider AR. And what they do it is through audio. And so I wanted to explore that space a little bit. And so I made an album that comes with a game that is meant to like be a soundtrack. And I really wanted to like, you don't have to listen to my album. You can listen to my album later, should you so decide. It's a lot of synthesizer noises. And so I kind of wanted, for this space, I wanted to take all of those ideas and see where I could push them together. And so I've like loosely written down some of the conceptual frameworks and ideas that I think are compelling that pull in all of those things. I don't know, I can go through all of them. We can chat about them over the course of the residency, but these are some of the things that are really important to me, and that kind of pull a lot of this. That big one at the end is that analog digital osmosis is really important to me, about pulling not just those spaces together, but the design lessons and the theory lessons from those spaces. In my experience, analog games sits very apart from video games and digital games, and they're not often in conversation with one another as far as the people who are making them. And for me, that little interstitial point is very compelling. And also, what happens if I don't have to make all the technology myself? What if I take things that are already existent, everyday objects, synthesizers in this case, and repurpose them into game mechanics, which is what we do with dice in TTRPG land. Is we take dice, we take coin flipping, we take all of these different things and we give them a different context by prompting players to relate to them as if they are the holders of the game and the game mechanics, and different divination tools, and this idea that we can just take our physical objects that are already existent, that are cool in a number of ways, and make them a part of a game, and thus kind of extend them into this weird augmented game play space is very interesting to me. And so that's what I'm going to be hunting through for the context of the next month. But it'll be a weird, this one is a theremin controlled synthesizer. So it will be body reactive in a number of different ways. A GIF.
Thank you. This is super informative. I'm actually really captivated by all of your ideas and projects.
Thank you.
That's so interesting. And there are people in the comments mentioning, where can we check out more of your work? Do you have a website or portfolio that you're willing to share with others?
Yeah, it's snackswell.com because I am a giant nerd.
Amazing. All right, thank you so much. So we'll have the next presenter. I think it's Lee coming up. Are you ready for your presentation?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you folks see my screen?
Yes.
All right, I'm really excited to be here, and it's been so amazing to see everyone's presentations. I think there are so many different perspectives. I'm really excited to dig into everything throughout the course of the week. So my name's Lee. I use they, them pronouns. I'm never really sure what one way to describe myself is, so I guess I'm going to say I'm an artist and researcher and person who just likes to explore lots of different things and be curious about the world. So hopefully you'll get sort of a sense of that as I talk through a little bit of my work. So this was a maybe pandemic fueled exploration that kind of embodies a lot of the things that I explore in my work. So what I'm really focused on is the places in which the body and technology intersect. So this can mean a lot of things. This is kind of an exploration of the way materials and the way like our physical form of our body can engage with technology in kind of unexpected ways. So these are all really basic switches that I built on my face. And yeah, they're all using conductive textiles and alligator clips and like sort of found materials, and also facial, different kinds of facial expressions and different placements of LEDs. I've also kind of explored this concept with physical materials as well. So this is another exploration that uses different kinds of materials around my home, different foods, different, the kitchen, literally the kitchen sink, to create different switches. And the idea with this is to sort of start thinking about technology in fundamentally different ways, whether that's different kinds of forms, different shapes, or just different contexts that you don't necessarily think of when you think of technology. The thing that I think I'm probably most known for recently is making zines. So I make zines about electronics. I started making these zines because when I learned electronics in art school, in my undergrad, I feel like we learned kind of this structure about how to do things, but we didn't learn a lot of the details. And a lot of people in my life, I've had some amazing mentors who really told me a lot about electronics, but there's some things that I just never picked up. And at one point, people expect you to know certain things about electronics that if you had a weird education, like many of us here, you might never have really learned the difference between strand core wire and solid core wire, or different kinds of buttons, or different kinds of LEDs. So these zines kind of tackle these topics that I think are often really overlooked. So the first one I made was all about wires, which I think is a much oversimplified topic. There's so many good things to say about wires. Then I had one about LEDs and buttons, and just actually this past month, I released two more. One is about resistance, and one is about batteries. So during the week, I'll bring some of these with me, and you guys can check them out if you want. But yeah, I feel really, really strongly that we need to kind of, it's okay to not know stuff, and it's okay to ask these questions. And what I really learned in making these zines is that a lot of people who I went to thinking they would know the answer didn't fully understand the subject either. So that was really interesting for me to explore, and I learned so much making them, and I hope other people can learn a lot making them as well. Something I've been exploring in the last couple of years is using digital embroidery to make conductive textiles. So this is used. I used a large machine at Concordia University. It's a large Tajima machine. It's like several feet wide. It's a really amazing machine, and using conductive threads to weave really complicated circuits and things that I could just never do with my hands, I'm able to do with this machine. So that's been something that's really exciting. This hasn't really coalesced into anything yet, but I'll be bringing a bunch of these samples with me if people want to explore them. I mostly have things to make soft speakers or soft motors that I've been experimenting with. So yeah, just something curious I'm hoping to explore a bit more, but I'll share a few projects that I've worked on so you guys can get a sense of the kinds of things that I'm doing. So this is a piece that I worked on at the Digital Naturalism Conference in 2019. It's part of an ongoing series that I'm doing called Collaborative Sensing. So this is a piece where one person is able to sense things and the other person is able to hear what they're sensing. So they're looking for bat noises in the jungle in Panama. So humans can't hear the frequencies that bats communicate in. So one person has a ultrasonic sensor on their hand, the other person has a transducer on their head, and they have to hold hands in order to complete the circuit to navigate the jungle. So only one person can hear it and only one person can look. So they're kind of working together physically to navigate the space, but also working together, to like physically interpret this sense that is invisible to both of them. So this is part of kind of an ongoing exploration I have with like trying to perceive imperceivable phenomenon. This is a piece I've been working on for several years called Void. So it's been exhibited in a bunch of different places. It's had a bunch of different iterations. It is sort of a piece that plays with different light perspectives. So there are two people who are in these huge hanging voids and they are looking at each other. And it uses sort of a light trick with LEDs where depending where the more powerful light is coming from, that side becomes a mirror and the other side becomes a window. So in this picture, it's a mirror, but the light will flip and it will become in this picture it's a window, but light will flip and it will become a mirror. And when one person can see through and look at the other person, that person is looking at a reflection of themselves, and then it sort of switches. So it really plays with your perception of space and your perception of self, and sort of lets two people kind of engage asynchronously in the same space. This is a piece I worked on with my collaborator, Hilary Predko. It's called Refamiliar. We like to say this is what it would look like if a server room got married. It's a piece that was a runway piece in Make Fashion 2018. It has a drone that holds the train of a dress and pulls it down the runway. Sadly, this image did end with the drone flying directly into the crowd. However, they were really good sports about it and no one got hurt. It was great. It was a lot of fun. This is another piece that me and Hilary worked on together called Android Apparatus. It is a performance piece where the wearer is on a hoop, a suspended hoop, and they're spinning around and dancing. And the garment itself is designed with data that was taken from her choreographed dance. So we put sensors on her and she did her dance to this specific music. We extracted that data and then converted it to the design that you see on her garment, and then laser cut it into that piece and then fabricated it. So she sort of is wearing the performance that she's doing. The piece is also responsive. So as she moves, it changes. This was a super fun challenge because it was really hard to design something that could be durable enough for someone to wear while they're performing something so physical. It was a lot of fun. We love working with performers and just like seeing how we can work kind of with them instead of making a costume that kind of works against them, because I think that ends up being, you know, a lot of costumes end up being really uncomfortable or hard to wear, especially wearable pieces. It's really hard to make something that you're able to actually perform in. So really happy about this one. This is a piece that was in the Lumiere Festival last year called Fiddlehex. It was down by the water in Trillium Park. It's just a public installation that's interactive. This year, also, me and the same group of folks are doing another installation, which has yet to be revealed. So if you like to go for walks in Trillium Park, definitely check out the Lumiere Instagram, which it'll be released soon. And it's going to be another large-scale interactive installation that I'm super excited about. And kind of the last thing I'll really say about my work is if anyone is interested in open source hardware, which I know everyone is to a certain extent because you're all sharing all of your amazing work here. I am the chair of the Open Hardware Summit, which is a global event that gathers people who are interested in making things and sharing them and collaborating. And previously it's been held in New York, or it's been held all around the world. And this year it's going to be held in Montreal, where I'm based. So if you would love to be involved or you'd love to attend or anything like that, please let me know. It's always a really, really fun time. And I love to keep it weird. I feel like that's my secret mission for the Open Hardware Summit, is to keep all the really weird stuff there and make sure that you know, we're all represented. So a lot of the work that I do takes place confronting imagined futures, identities, and places. So a lot of the work I do is speculative. It's imagining what different worlds might look like and really questioning what our identities sort of mean and symbolize in the idea of the future. So this has kind of been a big part of my ongoing PhD research, which is about outer space. So I came to this because I was thinking about the future and thinking about where we are going and the current discourse around technology, which is really, once again, very much focused on outer space. And outer space technology is unavoidably tied to the body in a variety of different ways. It's tied to the body through like physically extending our atmosphere, through creating spaces, through creating environments. So it kind of got me thinking about this whole trajectory of how the body is becoming intertwined with technology. I will bring some of these with me as well. This is a zine that I curated with Sagan Yi and Hilary Predko. It is called L4 Society. It's basically an anthology of a bunch of different artists working in questioning outer space and questioning kind of reimagining what like a feminist space station would look like, and what these feminist technologies that are really tied to the body, like what they could possibly mean and what they could possibly imply in the future. So it's a lot of fun just to work with people and just see what they imagine the future to be. So a lot of what I do is sort of pivoted on this idea of squishy futures. So for me, squishy futures means kind of two different things. It means sort of both that the future is malleable, it is something that we can change, it's something that we have influence on, and it's something that is definitely not set in stone. It's something that we can continue to explore and unpack and influence. And I think that's our role as artists and designers. But also in a very physical sense of tactility and malleability, and working with organic, biological, or textile elements, which kind of are a persistent theme in my work. I, am not much of a seamster or anything, but I do like working with squishy materials in a whole variety of contexts. So this all brings me to this project that I have had the luxury of being able to come to after a long time of thinking about how my work is, how I relate to my own work. And I am a visually impaired person, and this is a new aspect of my work that I have previously almost avoided being a part of my identity. For a really long time, I wanted to be seen as being very separate from this, and I wanted to be known for the work that I do that is unrelated to this. But through the project of doing my PhD research and through the project of just like understanding the evolution of technology, I really came to the understanding that it is inseparable in a way that I want to make evident. So this project that sort of I'm really just beginning to explore, I'm calling the maintenance of vision. So in this project, broadly, I am thinking about what infrastructure we have in our lives that upholds the idea of being dependent on vision. So for one thing, this comes from the idea of asking for accommodations, which is something that I have almost never done in my life that I'm becoming more and more comfortable doing. But also just like seeing and making clear that there are a lot of things that we have socially accepted that we go out of our way to do to accommodate people who are dependent on vision. So this can be, I think one of my favorite examples is light bulbs. I feel like it's kind of wild that we're all going to demand a light bulb in every single room in the whole world. To me, that's maybe a little bit excessive, but if people need what they need, that's okay. So this also can include things like color. This can include things like signage. And I think this really comes into play when we think about technologies like VR and like phones that are becoming less and less tactile, that we are kind of very much creating things that uphold this dependence on vision in a very, very specific way. So one thing I was thinking about when I was imagining what this looks like in the context of VR is thinking about these two squares, or in my VR mind, they are cubes. So what is the difference between both of these squares? And you could say that probably most people are going to say there's a red square and there's a blue square. But you could say that there's a square on the left, there's a square on the right. Maybe they have different textures, maybe they have different heights, maybe they have different feelings or different haptics in different kinds of ways. And there are a multitude of ways to describe and think of things, but we've become so dependent on the single idea of thinking about things. So I want to create or start exploring, because I think there's a huge amount of things to explore in this area, an idea of non-visual virtual reality. So what does that mean to make a space that feels immersive, that is not tied to vision? And one of the things that I find really difficult about virtual reality specifically is this, like, not only that it's vision dependent, but also that you lose your sense of tactility and you lose your hands, and you lose your touch. And I find I'm very dependent on my touch. Something I've realized about myself. I don't even like wearing gloves when it's cold because I really, really need my sense of touch. And when you're holding peripherals or you're holding something, to me, almost it makes me more aware that I'm in a virtual space. So some things that I'm really thinking about this free use of hands, this haptic ability to differentiate objects, a way to have like some kind of tactile mobility, so sensing your space by maybe moving your hands around or like feeling things in different ways of communicating information through maybe a system that's all over the body, or maybe yeah, just sort of like experimenting with audio, different ways of differentiating objects. So yeah, those are some things I'm hoping to explore. So in order to do this, I am working with a collaborator, a sighted collaborator, so they can offer me a different perspective, Kyle Chisholm, who's going to be working with me on creating a device for sighted and not sighted people to collaborate in a virtual reality space. So we are creating some silicone prosthetics that attach to the body that are able to let the wearer sense a bunch of different haptic input that we're going to do some experiments with. But also there is a screen element to it. It's kind of like an AR experience that lets the two collaborators operate on this equal kind of footing and explore that space in a way where the person who is sighted is not automatically the person with more knowledge, and that the person who is not sighted is not in an inherently supportive role. But the two are kind of operating that space together. So I'm really excited to explore this. It's something that I've been wanting to think about for a long time, but it is also something that I'm just sort of learning my own words to talk about, and sort of like uncovering the actual implications that this has for me and this has for other people. So yeah, I'm really excited to start unpacking that. Here's my contact information if anybody wants to check out my work or chat a bit more.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lee, for the presentation. I just said I was captivated, and now I'm once again very fascinated. It was super cool. I really like the idea about non-visual virtual reality. I was just actually talking with one of my colleagues, he was an audio designer, and mentioned about how in games, just by audio and the spatial sound, you can actually know where you're situated, judged by the things coming around, and how that actually adds a lot more immersiveness than we thought about it. Anyway, I need to stop my sharing, but let participants share. Okay, next up we have Lynn.
Hi everyone, my name is Lynn Mi Trong. I am an interdisciplinary artist and educator based in Detroit. I'm also a Kate Hartman fangirl, so I was really excited to be tapped to be involved with this residency with all of you. I've been super impressed with all of your talks, and it's been incredible seeing your work. I also recognize Kay from ITP. Just want to give a shout out. Super excited to see you again as well. Julian, could you put up my PowerPoint? Great. So yeah, this graphic is what swirls around in my head most of the day. I primarily work with textiles, video, and electronics in order to create multi-sensory experiences. So my practice attempts to meld together traditional textile techniques with modern technology to make something that feels somewhat familiar, but also a bit otherworldly and futuristic at the same time. So I have an extensive background in textiles, so it's great to hear a lot of the residents also are into textiles as well. I sew, weave, knit, embroider, but I feel like my main specialty is Japanese marbling, which is called suminagashi, and it features very prominently in my work. Separately, I got into electronics through music, being a musician in New York and repairing vintage music gear, mostly synthesizers, transistor organs, things that can electrocute you if you don't know what you're doing. And also through circuit bending, which I would describe as the process of creatively altering circuitry in machines in order to create wild, unpredictable sound effects. It's very chance-based. It's a very chance-based practice, which really falls in line with how I approach a lot of my art practice these days. I feel like I've learned a lot about electronics just from trying to break stuff. Then about like 5 years ago, I took a class on sewing circuits with conductive thread, and it was kind of a big aha moment for me. At the time, I was just working in textiles. So like it was suddenly I was able to, with these materials, conductive materials, able to find a way to connect my interest in textiles and electronics together. And then around the same time, I also started experimenting with video as a way to incorporate found footage. I collect a lot of like VHS tapes from estate sales and thrift stores, just random things. I shoot a lot of my own footage. So incorporating found footage with analog video effects into my work. The photo at the bottom is actually my home studio, where I have just a whole modular rack specifically for video, manipulating video, creating video effects. So I'm constantly just trying to find new ways to merge all of these passions and interests together to create compelling art. So this is a photo of a performance I did with musicians at this club called Nowadays in New York. Even though I work with textiles, video, and electronics, I consider my main medium to actually be light. I'm very inspired by light artists like James Turrell, Dan Flavin, and how they use light to change the environment around them and also the viewer's perception. So the first time I tried to do Suminagashi marbling, I was just captivated and enamored by just all of the swirling ink patterns. And I instantly thought of this, of using an overhead projector to project the process of marbling on a larger scale. So this is actually an image of that first performance I did with sound, with musicians. And then I was projecting onto the ceiling as the audience laid on their backs looking up. So it was kind of my first foray into creating like an immersive visual sound experience. And that intention has carried on throughout my work. I think thematically and visually, as an artist, I'm really drawn to Suminagashi because I'm very interested in the dichotomy of chaos theory and an ordered universe. So the process of Suminagashi is you don't have a lot of control over it, but there is some like elements of control that you can, and direction you can push the inks in the water. And I feel like this encapsulates the tension between wanting to control things that you ultimately cannot, but then sometimes just pure chaos and disorder will somehow self-organize into something that looks like a pattern. So I'm very fascinated by this concept. I also create objects that play with light using fabric or paper I've dyed or marbled. The lamp on the left is made of Japanese paper hand sewn into a geometric shape. And the quilt on the right is made out of silk with a Korean quilting method called pojagi, which creates a single layer quilt that you can hang in a window. So whether they're illuminated by light bulbs or natural light, I love how the intensity of the colors can change depending on the amount of light shining through and with the time of day. So Winter Circle, this was actually my first interactive installation and actually remains my favorite work I've done because it was the first time I was able to combine my interest in textiles, video, and electronics into one piece. The interactive installation has marbling videos, projection mapped onto the quilt. Along the seams, there are 3 different embroidered conductive thread segments that act as capacitive touch sensors. And these sensors activate different video changes and effects that I program through Max MSP Jitter, as well as original sound design that I created on modular synthesizers. So the videos themselves are playing at different lengths. So combining that with interaction from the viewer, the installation is like just constantly changing, it never repeats, which in a way simulates the act of marbling itself for the viewer. And generally the idea for this came because I'm always a little frustrated when I see textile works in a museum or gallery setting. because you're not allowed to touch anything. And I believe textiles are meant to be touched. It's the nature of the material. So, I really want to create interactive textile works that demand to be touched and interacted with. So Julian, could you play the first video? I have just like a small clip of this so you can see what it looks like. All right, if you can go back to, okay, awesome. The next piece is called Light Waves 1, and this was the first in a series of what I call light weavings. I wove EL wire through invisible nylon thread and use an Arduino to sequence the EL wire to blink at different intervals, creating a sort of polyrhythmic light display. And later iterations include sensors like microphones, trigger the wires for interaction. But lately I've been experimenting with flexible LED filaments. But I also recently found a board that turns EL wire into capacitive touch sensors. I love to explore new electronic materials that I can weave with and in general use in traditional textile processes. So I also have a video for this as well, if you want to play that. Thank you. We can go back to the presentation. Okay, so the last past work I wanted to talk about is just sort of my video work that I've been doing in recent years. This one I'm really proud of, actually. It's called Expand Contract, and it's a video collage of marbling visuals, found footage, video effects set to a modular synth score composed by my partner, Josh Dunn, who is a sound artist. It premiered for a show hosted by the Brick Theater in Brooklyn around the time of the 2020 election. I made this piece specifically for that show, and I scoured film archives for like government propaganda footage that's currently in the public domain that related to consumerism, misinformation, rapid industrialization. There was, I think, even some atomic bomb footage in there. And in order to create this video collage, I used like maybe more than 40 different clips from 40 different videos for this. And there's up to 3 or 4 layers of video at a time in this collage. So using old propaganda footage in this piece, I was attempting to subvert the original intention of the films to make sort of social political commentary about the current state of the American psyche, especially during that time in the election. So also through combining the abstract videos of marbling, using brightly colored video effects with carefully edited found footage, I feel like I'm able to approach more serious narratives and symbolism in my work through using a surreal lens. It somehow makes dark topics a little easier to digest if you make it look psychedelic. So I'm going to play a short clip of this. go back to the presentation. Thank you. So now on to my current work. For the past year, and then moving into this year, I've been working on this exhibition called Threads of Passage from Vietnam to America. That will debut in 2025. So this is actually the first time I've been working on a project, a multi-year project. And I recently got a grant from the Knight Foundation to fund this project. So I'm very excited about it. 2025 marks the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. So I wanted to do this project for personal reasons, for timely reasons. I have 3 installations that I'm working on for this exhibition that will hopefully, I can travel around the country and different cities that have large Vietnamese populations. The main installation will be a quilted and hand embroidered tapestry with an abstract representation of a world map. And then viewers will be able to interact with the installation and trigger different video clips of my family's stories from Vietnam to America in a non-linear fashion. So the past year, I traveled to Vietnam. The photo on the right is a still of video that I shot there. That's actually my parents. I took them to the port that they jumped on a boat and left Vietnam. And it was very emotional. And actually, my mom's been trying to call me during this artist talk, so I feel like she knows I'm talking about her. But it was, yeah, it's been a very challenging journey to get this footage for myself and for my family. But I feel like it's necessary as a second generation Vietnamese American to document this history while we can for future generations, even if it makes me really uncomfortable with how personal the subject matter is. I'm also including, as part of this exhibition, stories of the different people who helped my family resettle in America. So the photo on the left is of my parents and our Mennonite sponsors. My family was sponsored by a Mennonite community in rural Appalachia, which is where I grew up. So this very weird immigrant experience resulted in some unexpected cross-cultural friendships that continue to this day. So I wanted to highlight that as well. Yeah, and I'm just really excited to present this work to the Vietnamese American community and also the greater public at large. So for this project, or for this residency, I would like to work on a wearable instrument partially inspired by the theremin. I remember Max had mentioned the theremin in his in their speech earlier, but I was really fascinated by the theremin when I was a kid. I just didn't really understand how you could just play air. So for those of you who don't know, there are 2 antennae, one which controls pitch and another that controls volume with your hands. And so I'd like to explore the possibility of using the body as an instrument to create sound through different sensors for a performance-oriented wearable that will respond to the wearer's movements. And I'll also be experimenting with NeoPixels, different light diffusion methods to react with sensors for visual feedback. And my hope is to create multiple wearables that can trigger and interact with each other, and as a way to use technology to enhance communication through sound and light. I also used to work as a technical designer in the fashion industry. And so even though my previous work has been more on installations, I'm just really excited to get back into the world of wearables and use my skill set with garment construction, design, to sort of transfer what I've learned through installations to live on the body. I also want to try different methods of programming, playing around with different boards for this process. And I'm also excited to learn about VR, extended reality. I don't have much experience in either. And I'm also open to collaborating with any of the other residents. Hopefully we can come up with some new ideas for projects during the course of this residency. So yeah, thank you for listening to my talk, and I look forward to meeting you all IRL.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really interesting to hear that how your thoughts and the identity are interwoven into the abstract expressionist forms, and I find that really poetic. It's also really interesting how I feel like I did such a good job in ordering people into lines that Lee was just mentioning about light being everywhere and being too bright sometimes. And then talking about the squishy feature, and you're presenting a project on light waves, which I find very, I don't know, a callback of the squishy light. Anyway, now we have our last resident, which is Michelle. Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. Give me 1 second to share my screen. All good? You can see it? Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle. I have to say, honestly, like as the last person going, I'm blown away by everyone's stuff. Like I am really inspired. I am joining this as someone who is definitely in the early career stage. So it's so cool to sort of be involved in this with people that are so much farther along and have done so many cool things. A little bit about me. I am, as a hobbyist, I am a maker, gamer, writer, baker, which I realize literally as I was looking at the slide 2 seconds ago, sounds like a nursery rhyme, but it's not. It's just a collection of things that I do. I'm a bit of a digital generalist. I studied media foundations at Humber. And so I know some graphic software. I know some sound recording. I know some video editing. Like I have a little bit of a foothold in a lot of that kind of tech. I've spent the last 10, 11 years in publishing, in audiobooks specifically. Over that time, I got to lead a couple of startups. We were working in distribution and then into a small publisher. I led original content at Rakuten Kobo for 4 years. And most recently, I became a teacher, which was insanely hard. It was so much harder than I ever could have imagined. I developed a new course for audiobook production for TMU's publishing certificate program. So a lot of the work that I do is creative or creative adjacent in different ways. But when it comes to VR, XR, wearables tech, I'm very new. But that's as a creator. I want to share my VR origin story. I don't know if this looks familiar to anyone when I'm playing the video I'm playing now. But when I got my first job at an audiobook company, the owner of the company got an Oculus dev kit and he set it up in the cafeteria. He thought it was so cool. And this was the demo, and I was like patiently waiting my turn. I was so excited. And people are like getting sick and they're like falling off the chair, and people, I think they didn't enjoy it. Like early VR was not very enjoyable, but I put this on and I went through what is essentially like a Zillow tour of this empty villa. And I was like, this is it. This is the future. I cannot wait. I was so excited about it. But I was very intimidated by the technical know-how, especially at the time, that needed to be used. I didn't know anything about code. I wasn't a 3D modeler. And so I just kind of set it aside and I was like, you know what? At some point, someday, I'll kind of get back around to this. And so I just enjoyed it as a consumer for a decade. And then last year I was planning my sabbatical year. And I thought, you know what, I'm a lot less intimidated. There's been a lot of changes. Let's see what we can do. So I took a course over the summer through U of T, and I learned the basics of VR, some C#, some Unity, and just started playing around with things. And then I got the chance to be involved in a couple of game jams as the developer, which felt like a crazy, like I never thought that I would be at that stage. So to do that was very cool. And one of the ones that I got to do was actually the Bodies in VR game jam last want to say August. And by the end of that whole process, I feel like I'm just starting to get to the point of fluency where I'm not looking every single thing up. I'm not following tutorials. I'm actually able to execute on my own ideas that I'm excited about. And so that is where I am at the outset of this residency. So because I'm really early in my artistic practice with this technology, I love hearing the ways that everyone is thinking about things and the work that you've done. I don't have a deep body of work to pull from for this. So I think the best way to express my creative process and what is interesting to me is just to talk about some of the things that have really influenced me and, some concepts that are important to me or interesting when I'm thinking about one of these ideas. So the number one thing is just some theatricality. I'm a theater kid. I love a show. I love a stunt. I love a little costumed event. I throw a lot of sort of themed things. At one point I was asked by some friends, like, can we just come over in our normal clothes? Like, will there ever be a moment where we're just allowed to come here as regular people and there isn't some sort of greater theme or concept happening? I love immersive theater. I know Sleep No More, controversial. Some people think it's cheesy. I know there's someone from New York actually in the residency. I would be curious to know your thoughts on it. I loved it. It was one of my core memories to be in the most beautiful, complex set design and to be able to just touch everything and walk around and choose what you wanted to see and choose what you wanted to do. I found that thrilling. And that has definitely influenced a lot of the way that I think about building experiences, especially room scale experiences where you are able within your virtual space to walk up to everything and open a drawer and, open a book. And then the second component of this, I guess it's like literally immersive theater, is 4DX. I think they used to be called D-Box, 4D-Box. These, if you haven't seen one, and I will not be shocked if many people haven't, it is a regular movie and they add enhancements to it. So the seats move, they have little fog machines. They'll release the smell of pines if it's a forest scene. They will squirt water on your face with these little tubes in the seats that have definitely never been cleaned ever, which is a harrowing idea. And I don't know that it's even particularly enjoyable. And it feels a little bit like something that in the 50s or 60s sci-fi writers would say movies in the 2000s would be like. But I love the concept. I love the gimmick of it. I love the hamminess of it. And there's something about bringing the full body and more senses than just vision and hearing into creating the sense of immersion that it inspires me a lot. And I think it's a really interesting thing to play with. The next concept that I love in my work is the just general sort of discomfort, which feels strange to say. Typically, my ideas tend towards being kind of goofy, a little bit absurd, surreal, something that I really like experiencing and eliciting in other people is a sense not of fear or being challenged on morals or something like that, but just being uncomfortable with the sense of something just isn't right about this. I don't know about this. That the thinking face emoji is kind of sums up a lot of what I like to put forth in my work. And that's a long-standing theme. On the left here, we have a literally 12-year-old, one of my first digital projects, and my co-creator actually, I believe, is in the chat right now. Shout out to Ho-Hum Games. And this is a lovely, bouncy, colorful environment. Not this one, this is a trash yard. And then we just have this soulless little garbage monster who's just running around and grabbing things. And I think that's a perfect example of what I think is funny and interesting. And a more sort of professional or maybe relatable example of what I'm talking about is from the Hand Physics Lab that STEAM released in 2019. I suspect a lot of people in this residency have tried this before, but it's an experimental hand tracking activity, right? So you start out and you're doing a lot of very childlike activities. So you're wearing your headset and you're using your real human hands, which are represented with virtual hands inside, and you're picking up a red ball and you put it into the red cup. You pick up a green ball and you put it into the green cup, and it's all very safe. It's all very, gentle. And then you get to this level. So you're like 25 minutes in, and these hands that you're seeing are your hands. And then the level is that you have to cut off your own hands with a laser and then use your stumps and hold on to them and then drop them into a bowl. And I so viscerally, when I came to this level, I did not want to do this. Like, I was like, these are my hands. I don't want to do this. And so that sensation, to me, it's just fun. It's playful. It's interesting. And once you push through that, and then you're on the other side, now you're doing this strange, weird thing that is really fun to do. And you can move past that sensation and just move into the enjoyment level of it. So the third thing is body diversity and inclusion in VR. So I'm a fat person. I live in a fat body, and I pay a lot of attention to the way that different marginalized bodies are represented and perceived in all different kinds of media. But VR is a particularly interesting one because I think we embody our avatars or our presences in VR. It just feels so much closer to who we are because of that connection to, you're wearing it on your head. It's first person POV. And that interest is part of the reason that I was actually really interested in this series of events and workshops. So this is what we did in August. This is what me and my team did. Someone on my team, Topher, had a really awesome thought. Just thinking about the way that our virtual bodies do not change. They do not age. They don't get dirty. They don't grow hair. They are just, they're forever the same. And so we had this idea that we wanted to play with the concept of a body that you start out with one thing and then it changes over time. And we took that very thoughtful prompt, and by the end of this 48-hour jam, it was Egg World. And you take an egg and you have no idea what's inside the egg, and you put that on your body, and then after a certain period of time, it turns into something else. And as you can see with the examples, I actually can't take credit for any of that. I was just the developer on this one, so I was heads down while my teammates were creating these beautiful models. But so that was a great experience. But I would say, even taking a step back from that in general, I'm quite concerned and protective over body representation in VR because I feel like we are at an early stage in the mainstream use of this technology. And I'm seeing a lot of these awesome prototypes and really cool products coming out all the time on LinkedIn. Every day there's new stuff. And it is always the same hands, and it is always the same bodies. And I understand prototypes are prototypes. You can't fit everything in. But as someone who's come from a background working at multiple tech companies, I know the first thing to go when deadlines are tight and budget is tight, inclusivity concerns they get cut. And if things are not present early in the process, there's the farther you go down the path of development without having these kinds of priorities, the less likely they are to ever be included. And I really don't want to see a future where we're using this kind of tech all the time in work and play and socialization, and it lacks that representation and inclusion. So that's something that even in my own work, I'm not a good developer, but I can't do everything that I want to do. But I'm working hard to try to build myself little tools and little things that I can use to make sure that it's represented even in my own early work, just because I think it's just a principle for me. So for this residency, I won't go too far into the project itself, but when I saw the call for the residency, I had an idea that was literally one of the first or second thoughts that I had 10 years ago after I first tried VR. I thought of this idea and I was like, this is just an intrusive thought. This is a joke. This is so dumb. And I just locked it away, and it's just been marinating in there for 10 years. And I saw the call for the residency and I was like, okay, let's propose it. Let's see what they say. So what I will be working on is an asymmetrical two-person, not two-player, but two-person VR game experience that incorporates multi-sensory enhancements, including taste, touch, smell, temperature. I want a lot of the more gross and very like corporeal elements of the body to be represented in this. My first priority will be, because I've definitely bitten off like a little bit more than I can chew with this, will be making a piece of software that functions really well. And, it's engaging, it's well-paced. And then my second priority, because I'm less confident in number one, and then number two will be to really find playful and interesting lo-fi ways to bring those sensory enhancements to life. I don't have any experience in wearables at all. I don't really know much about robotics or microcontrollers. Maybe that's something during the residency. It seems like all of you guys, or most of the people, have a lot of experience in that. So maybe there's an opportunity for me to learn and incorporate something there. Otherwise, it will just be me on the other side pushing buttons and blasting someone with a hairdryer or something like that. So if it is, that's what it is, then I'll still be really happy with that. And that's me. And also I just want a quick thank you to OCAD and to DMG for putting this together, because this is a really, really cool experience. And I'm just excited to participate.
Thank you so much. All right, so all four of the residents has finished their presentation. And since there are four, I won't pose questions to each of them, you guys, but I'll just put one question for all of you, and whoever wants to take it, please go ahead. So I'm very curious that several of you have all mentioned about the bad side of technology, like the excessiveness of it, or sometimes you're afraid of it. It might be intrusiveness, pervasive, or cause some discomfort, but you're still actively engaging and incorporating this technology as a way of expression, as your means of media in creating your work or express itself. Or if there is something that I might be wrong in saying that, just wondering what is your view about technology? Why do you still chose it? If that makes sense.
I am very spite motivated. I am extremely motivated by spite. My entire artistic path has been largely motivated by oh, I hate that. I bet I can do it in a way that I like, or I wonder if I can do it in a way that I like. And sometimes that is representationally. Sometimes that's Oh, that thing's horrifically misogynist. I wonder if I can like engage with it in a way that counters that, or that includes trans people, or whatever, takes queerness as its base value. And sometimes that's, wow, technology is dumb. I wonder if there's a way to make it not dumb, especially because I work so close to games frequently. It's like games is a very bad space in a number of ways, whether that's like representationally or labor practice wise or like the ethics of technology and their associated labor practices is ever present and ever complicated. And so I feel like frequently for me, I'm like, I wonder if it could not be that, or I wonder if I can figure out a way to make it interesting without all that baggage or whatever. Spite. The answer is spite for me.
As a contrast, I would say mine would be hope. the other side of the spite coin. Just, the idea that I don't think that it is inherently bad. I think that it is bad because of the motivations or the ways that things play out. And I think that removing yourself from it and saying, okay, I don't want to be involved in that at all, just leaves all the space for all the bad stuff to happen. And being involved and having a presence and having like some sort of a force is what is the only chance that we got, basically. So I think using it, like using tech in ways that we think are better and more ethical is sort of the best approach that I can think of.
That makes sense. Okay, so if no one else is replying to this question, I will conclude this great launch event and presentation. So I'll share my slide just shortly. Julian, can you help me to get that up? Okay, thanks. So here's the part that I forgot to present at first. Okay, so upcoming key dates is that from the 5th, we have the in-person week, and there are already people traveling along the way. And on the 8th, there will be the open house taking place at OCAD. And on the 29th, will be a virtual open house. This alongside of that, there will be other discussions and immersive collaborations working with all of you. And it's really interesting throughout these talks that I heard there are so many thought bubbles and understanding of yourselves and about the universe. I feel like there will be a lot more interesting discussions during the in-person residency. We have the soft toolbox discussion scheduled, but also there are much more organic ones if you want to chat with each other, and we can make that happen. We hope the BER will be an inner examination or review of the relationship about yourself with your body, with the world, and have some learning, have some fun, to do some collaboration with each other, so that will make it a good experience. And as we shared about the design justice, we hope this would be a more equal and non-hierarchical at all form of collaboration. Yeah, running out of words. Kate or Emma, do you guys want to try and say something else?
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. Wow, what an amazing group of people. It's so exciting. I'm really looking forward to getting a chance to spend some time together with everyone next week. So for the residents who are still in the room, I think we'll get to meet in person on Monday. There's a bunch of really sort of like exciting plans there. I had a chance to have a tour around your studio, and Kate's been doing some amazing work getting the space ready for everybody. And I think it's remarkable that Ellie's been able to sort of pull this off really with a full-time job and all of the other things that's going on. So yeah, I think Cindy's just gonna join us as well, but we just wanted to pop our faces in to say we look forward to seeing you in person on Monday, and we're so very excited by everyone's work. And yeah,
I'll just follow on and say that, yeah, I think a lot of us are just kind of bursting with excitement. This has been this is towards the end of a multi-year project, but to have this work and these voices in conversation with each other is just very exciting to me. Like I made a lot of noises while these presentations were going on that, were excitement noises, because so many brilliant things were said. And so for those who are joining us who are in Toronto, I really encourage you to come by for the open studio that we have, and that'll be up on our socials. But also, we have an awesome check-in at the end of the month, also on a Thursday at the same time. So that's where we'll get to talk about what happened this month. So yeah, just yay. And wanted to wish everyone who's traveling safe travels, and so excited to see you on Monday. Cindy, I don't know if you want to say hi.
I'll say hi. I don't have a huge spiel. I spent the better part of the evening listening to amazing talks and breaking up dog fights. So, but yeah, I am so excited that folks are coming together in this. There were so many just amazing little points of connection between everybody's different talks. I think this is going to be tremendously productive and just fun and amazing. And it's it'd be a great February.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. I kind of knew some of it going in, but just hearing everyone's talks, like I'm excited for you. I know some of you know each other, but I'm excited for you all to meet each other, because I think there's some really beautiful connections between all of your work, and it's all quite different but related in different ways. So, yay!
thank you. Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Ellie, for being amazing. And yeah, thanks for everyone for presenting. And I will see you all on Monday.